Hello ladies, and welcome to week 4 of the Three Rivers Homestead Pantry Challenge. I cannot even believe that I've been doing this for a month. And to be honest, my pantry and fridge and freezers do not look like I've been doing it for a month either. Next week, I'm going to do an updated review of my pantry items and my fridge and my freezers. There's been a little bit of progress, but not a lot. As you can see, I decided to make some white beans, and like always, I am decanting them because that is my favorite thing in the world. The labels that I'm using I got from Amazon, and I am going to link them down below because I do really love them. They are easy to clean off. They're pretty easy to write on. If you have a thinner Sharpie, that would look even better than this thick one does, but I do highly recommend them. And as you can see, my whole pantry is filled with other decanted goods. I just love how it looks so much. It makes my heart happy. So with these white beans, I'm going through and just pulling out any stones or really shriveled up beans. To be honest, this is only the 3rd or 4th time that I have ever in my life made beans from dry. That was not something that I learned growing up. It's something that's very intimidating to me, and I don't know why. One of the other times that I made them, I did use an Instant Pot because I was actually house sitting, and that was a really good experience. So one of the things that I don't like about making beans from dry is the skins always come off. So go ahead and leave me a comment down below if you have any ideas on how to prevent that. For this method, I did do a quick soak, so I brought them up to a boil, and I think it was to leave it for 15 minutes. I don't remember, or let it boil for 15 minutes and then let it sit for an hour before you cooked them. So as you can see here, I have chopped and oiled some carrots and potatoes. So I have a pound of carrots and a pound of potatoes. I actually am making a carrot soup recipe. So I am going to roast those potatoes and carrots, and they turned out really lovely. The carrot soup recipe, I did decide to modify quite a bit. It's one that I'm going to work on perfecting so that I can give it to you guys because it was absolutely phenomenal. I had some mushroom stock left, so I did end up using that. I don't really like mushrooms, but I want to try to incorporate them into my diet a little bit more. A really good idea to use the mushroom stock in the soup because it melded everything and gave it a nice umami without it being an overwhelming mushroom flavor. Then I did some onions that I rehydrated. I've tried every trick in the book and I simply cannot cut onions. So I do use dehydrated ones, and I will just put them in some warm water and then strain them. I also did some garlic, minced garlic, and some minced ginger as well. And I added onion powder. After I let those cook down with the cumin seasoning, I did deglaze the pot with the mushroom stock, and I've never done deglazing before either. And so basically, if you're not familiar with it, what it is you have some sticky yummy food all over your usually stainless steel pot, and you add some wine, some sherry, some water, some broth, and the water heating up actually allows you to go in and scrape off all the yummy goodness that's on the pot and add that flavor to what you're cooking instead of leaving it behind on the pot. Also makes things a lot easier to clean up when you're all done. So after I brought all of that to a warm stage and got the pot deglazed, I am just adding my carrots and my potatoes back into the stock, and I'm going to leave those to simmer for about 15 minutes to really marry all of those flavors together, make them nice and uniform, and get a really nice, deep, gorgeous flavor on this soup. I made some cornbread rolls as well, and those went really well with the little bit of spiciness in the soup. And then I'm just going to go through and blend the soup after it's been on the stove for about 15 minutes. I had to go really slow because I was really scared of making an absolute mess. If you've been paying attention, I've already dropped carrots and potatoes pretty much all over my kitchen. I am not very good at things like this. I am very clumsy. I made sure to get all of the ginger and garlic out of the bottom, and then I added some white beans in as well. I probably did maybe about a cup of white beans. I really wanted to make it a well-rounded soup. I wasn't feeling very well that day. Wanted to make sure I got my protein in there, and it worked perfectly. It was absolutely delicious, super well balanced, and really nutritional. You know those meals that you just eat them and after you're done, your stomach is just so happy and content. You're comfortably full, you're not bloated, you're not feeling any digestive pains. That's what this soup was. It was just a perfect balance of everything that my heart, soul, and body needed on that day. For this week's pantry video, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I did decide to change it up and actually only show you the things that I cooked instead of showing you every meal out of my kind of processed kitchen. Leave me a comment down below and let me know which style you prefer. If you do like seeing every meal, I can do that for this next week for you guys. Anytime you make a mess in the kitchen, try to make sure you clean it up right away. Makes life a whole lot easier so you're not letting things sit and get sticky or gross or anything like that. For this meal, I was making some pasta. I had this cauliflower pasta in my freezer, so I just decided to use that up. And then I had a butternut squash pasta sauce that I was really excited for, so I decided to use that on the cauliflower pasta. Figured it would be pretty good. I was rather impressed. The cauliflower pasta was really very starchy, and I wasn't expecting it to be like that. So it actually was a very toothsome food, but it soaked up the pasta sauce like nobody's business. I had to keep adding it throughout the night just to get it to where it was saucy enough for me, and I like medium-ish sauciness. I also decided to do a couple of rolls with this one. I have a few rolls of Pillsbury buns in my fridge, so I just wanted to make sure that I used those up as much as I can. I decided to test those out in my air fryer, and then I found the rest of the white beans that I prepared a couple days beforehand, so I decided to add those in there as well just to give it some more protein. This ended up being a pretty good overall meal. It wasn't my favorite meal. The pasta was okay, but I think the sauce ultimately just didn't have very much flavor to it. There wasn't a lot of seasoning, and I usually love straight butternut squash flavor. The butternut squash flavor itself was really mild, and so that's where I was struggling with this. I ate some of it and it just was not hitting home like I wanted it to. And then I had got some chocolate protein almond milk this week. That was kind of my little splurge this week. Please let me know, am I using my air fryer just completely wrong, or does the Dash brand one not work very well? Because everything that I've done, I've dropped the temperature, I've dropped the time, I've followed online air frying instructions, and everything burns. I'm getting very frustrated with it because I struggle with burnt food at all. Like, I do not like burnt food, and I don't want to waste it. So I am having a really hard time making sure that I'm eating the things that I'm making in there, even though I love the convenience of it and I love not having to turn on my whole oven, but it's not going to be worth it if I continue to burn my food. I did decide to top my pasta with some Parmesan cheese, which was really good. When I was sick, I decided to defrost some blueberry bagels that I had in my freezer, and I accidentally left them in the sink and they got some water into them. So they were a little bit soggy. I caught it pretty quick, and so what I did was I just broke them all up into little pieces, tossed them into the oven at a really low temperature to dry them back out. And then with that in mind, I decided to do a bread pudding with them instead of just eating them straight all week. I've never done a custard based bread pudding before, so when I've done bread puddings in the past, I usually just do eggs and milk and then I pour that over the breadcrumbs. But this one was actually having me heat up milk and butter and sugar. I've also never done a sweetened base for my bread pudding, and then adding in the eggs at a later point in time after that mixture had cooled enough to not scramble the eggs. So I don't know if it was because of how dry the bagels were or because they were bagels. I have done a bagel bread pudding before and it turned out great, but this specific recipe or my techniques or something about the situation ended up with the bagels not absorbing enough of the mixture, and so the mixture actually did kind of scramble in between the pieces of bagel. So when I was eating it, it was very much so a eggy custard, not smooth, but kind of scrambled egg texture in between the pieces of bread. So I'm not sure that I would make this specific recipe again. I did like the little bit of sweetness that I got from having the sugar in there. However, I don't really feel that it was necessary. So I don't think that I will do a sweetened based bread pudding in the future, because I usually like things to be not overly sweet if it's not intended to be sweet. So if I'm just making a breakfast that doesn't need to be sweet, I try to avoid adding sweetness in that situation. I ended up not having quite enough of the custard base for how much bread was in there, so I had to make another half of a batch afterwards just to make sure that enough of the bread was going to get covered so it wasn't a completely crispy top, because again, I don't like crispy, so I really wanted to avoid that. I forgot to put in any vanilla the first time around, so I did add quite a bit of that so that it would mix in with the rest of it. All in all, the bread pudding turned out pretty good. It just wasn't quite my favorites. Thank you so much for joining me for week 4 of the Pantry Challenge. For more challenge content, click on the playlist on the screen and don't forget to like and subscribe.